Hey there. Ever stop and wonder who really calls the shots in an Indian state? It's a fascinating power puzzle. And what's really interesting is that its design is pretty much a carbon copy of the national government. So let's dive in and solve this thing together, piece by piece.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it. The big question is, who's the real head of the state? Is it the person with the formal title, the one who looks official on paper, or is it the person who actually won the people's vote?
All right, so here are our two main players. On one side, you've got the governor, who's the appointed figurehead, and on the other, the chief minister, the elected leader. Figuring out the relationship between these two, that's the key to the whole puzzle. So let's kick things off by looking at the governor's side of the equation.
So when we talk about the governor, think of them as the formal head of the state. They are the president's representative, which means they're also kind of like the eyes and ears of the central government right there on the ground.
Right, so what does nominal head actually mean? Well, it's kind of like being the chairperson of a company. You have the official title, you oversee things, but it's the CEO, who in our case is the chief minister, who's running the day-to-day business. The governor's main job really is to be that vital link, that bridge between the state and the central government. Now, here's something that's absolutely crucial to understanding their role. The governor isn't elected by the people of the state. Nope. They're appointed by the President of India for a 5-year term. And this is so important because it explains their dual role, right? They're the constitutional head of the state, but at the same time, they're the central government's link. And look, just because it's a formal role doesn't mean it's a powerless one. Not at all. The governor has some serious powers. For instance, they're the ones who appoint the chief minister and their council. Plus, they literally have the final say on laws. No bill becomes an act without their signature. But maybe their most significant power, and sometimes the most controversial, is what's called discretionary power. Okay, this is where things can get really serious. We're talking about Article 356. This article gives the governor the power to recommend something called President's Rule. Basically, if the governor thinks the state government just isn't working according to the Constitution, that things have gone off the rails, they can recommend dismissing the elected government. That means the central government steps in and takes over. It's supposed to be a last resort, but you can imagine, it's a massive power and a huge point of tension. All right, so if the governor is the formal head of state, who's actually running the government day to day? Well, that brings us to the other side of the puzzle, the chief minister, or the CM. This is where the real executive power lies. See, the chief minister's power doesn't come from an appointment. It comes straight from the people. The CM is the leader of the party that gets a majority in the state legislative assembly. And they're not just a leader. They're also the governor's chief advisor on, well, pretty much everything. And the path to becoming chief minister is all about democracy. It all starts with the people, with your vote. You elect your representatives to the legislative assembly. Then, the party that wins the majority picks its leader. That leader becomes the chief minister. And then they, along with their ministers, get to run the government. The power flows from the ground up. But, and this is a big but, that power isn't guaranteed forever. If the assembly passes a vote of no confidence, it means the government has lost the support of the majority of elected members. And if that happens, the whole ministry has to resign. It's a system of checks and balances that keeps the government accountable to the legislature. Okay, so we have the governor and the chief minister, but they don't operate in a vacuum, right? They can't just make up the rules. They have to work within a framework of power, a system of laws made by lawmakers and upheld by law guardians. First up, you've got the state legislature. This is basically the lawmaking body of the state. Now, most states have just one house, the Legislative Assembly or the Vidhan Sabha, where members are directly elected by the people. Some states also have an upper house, the Vidhan Parishad, which is more of a review body. But make no mistake, the real power, especially when it comes to money, lies with the directly elected lower house. So who keeps everyone honest? Who makes sure the government follows the laws that the legislature makes? Well, that's the job of the High Court. They're the highest judicial authority in the state, the ultimate legal referee, making sure all the other courts are playing by the rules too. The High Court's role is massive. It can hear cases directly, especially important ones about our fundamental rights. It's also the place you go to appeal decisions from lower courts. And here's something really important. Its decisions become precedents. They're recorded and used to guide future legal judgments, which means they literally shape the law for the entire state. Okay, we've been looking at all these pieces at the state level. Now, here comes the big reveal. the aha moment. Because this whole structure, it's a mirror image of the national government. This is India's federal structure in action, and it's actually pretty brilliant. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. At the union level, you have the president. At the state level, the governor. The real head at the union level is the prime minister. At the state level, it's the chief minister. Parliament becomes the state legislature. The Supreme Court becomes the high court. See? It's the same blueprint, just scaled down. So really, the main thing to take away here is that the state government is basically a microcosm of the national government. If you get one, you pretty much get the other. It's a perfect miniature.
All right, so let's put that last piece of the puzzle into place and wrap this up. We started with the question, who runs an Indian state? Why does this whole balance of power matter? And here's the final answer. The chief minister and their cabinet, the elected leaders, they hold the real executive power. They're the ones running the government. The governor's role is to be the constitutional head, the watchdog, making sure everything aligns with the Constitution and keeping that connection to the national government strong. Ultimately, this whole system is about balance. It's a balance between what the people of a state vote for and the overall constitutional framework of the country. So, I'll leave you with a question to chew on. How does this federal balance, this push and pull between an appointed head and an elected leader, actually affect your daily life? It's definitely something